Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Holistic Pharmacy Podcast. I have a very, very special guest. I say this every time, but he has a truly amazing background. So I can't wait to introduce you to James Berry, who's got 20 years in the culinary field and started as a private chef cooking for celebrities such as Tom Cruise, George Clooney, and many, many others. And he is now the CEO and founder of the Oregon-based superfood seasoning Pluck. It's the first of its kind and an amazingly easy and delicious way for people to get organ meats into our diets. James is also a published cookbook, having co-authored several books, and he authored the cookbook, The Naked Foods Cookbook, and he's also the host of the podcast, Everyday Ancestral. So without further ado, James, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me, Marina.
Yeah, so quite impressive, as I mentioned. I'd love to hear how you got started as a chef and then cooking for these celebrities.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising to this day, even for my mother, who can't believe she has a chef as a son. I grew up in a household where you knew dinner was ready because the smoke detector went off. It was truly not a foodie household. But I think over the years I've come to learn. I had truly a passion for food from a very young age. Mostly the passion was of learning how to cook these foods. And I think what I later learned was that food was my way of expressing love to those around me. And to this day, it's ultimately, my mission is to try to help people with their health, but through cooking. It's a very practical. I'm kind of like the how guy, that's how I best describe it. Like a lot of times I've worked with practitioners over the years, whether they're dietitians, nutritionists, doctors, or even trainers, and they'll be working with their clients and they'll say, if it's the nutritionist or dietitian, they'll say, oh, this is what you need to be eating and this is why. And then the person will say, but how? Because you're telling me to not eat everything I eat. And so then they would call me. I was like the guy who could come in and help people not feel deprived, help people easily incorporate replacements for foods that they weren't supposed to be eating. So that became my specialty over the years.
Yeah, amazing. So how did you get into this mix between food and health and eventually start talking about superfoods?
Yeah, it's really an example of contrast. I think for me, well, early on, I didn't think that cooking was a career. I just, back in the day, we forget because now we're, overrun with celebrity chefs, and the cooking shows and all that. I think there's multiple cooking channels at this point. But back in the day, there were two. It was Julia Child's and I seem to remember one called The Frugal Gourmet, and they were both on public access TV. So there was nothing celebrity about cooking back in the day. It was like you either owned a restaurant or that was kind of it. At least that's how it was presented. So I just didn't see it as a viable career because I didn't want to work late nights. Didn't want to own my own restaurant. But ultimately, it still became something I wanted to do. And in my early 30s, I realized that this was what I wanted to pursue. I kind of finally accepted it. I went to culinary school and I quickly became a private chef. It was pretty amazing how quickly it happened. But I became known as someone who was making everything from scratch, and so particularly women who were having trouble losing their pregnancy weight, their baby weight, they started immediately losing it when I cooked for them. And it was simply that I made everything from scratch, from dressings to sauces. I used real food. To this day, how I describe it is I used ingredients versus foods that have ingredients, so nothing was prepackaged or ultra processed when I cooked for clients. And then ultimately I built my resume, but I still wasn't satisfied. I was cooking for Tom Cruise and I still felt like I'm not here just to cook for one person. I really want to help as many people as possible. And so I started a meal delivery service. And that was definitely one of those examples where I don't know if you've ever read those business books, but they'll talk about how you can know how to be a pie maker, but you may not know how to run a pie business. And that was very much me. I knew how to cook, but I did not know how to run a business. So starting this meal delivery service was very much my kind of business school education. And I failed many times. I mean, ultimately I sold the company, but I didn't make much money, and my health suffered because I really didn't know what I was doing, but I was really determined, and I just worked so hard, but ultimately, it cost me my health. I felt like I had lots of panic attacks over the 8 years that I owned that business. I got lots of gray hair, and I didn't exercise, didn't eat well. And so once I sold the company, it was very much about getting my health back, taking care of myself again. Because it's ironic, of course, here I was wanting to take care of everyone else, and yet the one person in that relationship that wasn't being cared for was me. And that's very true. If you talk to almost any health practitioner out there, that's usually the case, is that their own health is suffering when they're trying to help so many people. But during that time where I got my health back, I came up with the idea for what I'm currently doing, which is Pluck. And it's basically a way for people to get what I think is the most nutrient-dense food on the planet into their diets easily and deliciously. And that's through our seasoning, which has the organ meats in it. But ultimately, when I started this new company, I used all of the knowledge I learned from over the years, the things that didn't work, and I really built them into this new company so that now my health is just as important as the business. So the way I talk about it is my health plan is part of the business plan now.
Wow, I really love that concept, James. And I'm going to use this word again. Everything you've shared is really, really impressive because you have grown in the ranks, right? You reached initial success, and then you had some challenges, and then now you're picking up with everything that you learned, like you said, and just making a go of the things that you're passionate about without sacrificing your health. And what you're describing is basically typical burnout, no matter what career or industry you're in, when you are sacrificing your health for the sake of productivity, efficiency, moving up your ranks or something like that as an employee or as a business owner. Sometimes you start to resent like what you're even doing in the first place because it's not bringing you the joy, the health, whatever that you expected, even if the money is coming. It's like, at what cost is it coming? So what you described is really just reevaluating the priorities, and I love the building in your health into the business plan. I think that's a very novel concept, and it sounds like you are an innovator, in every step of the journey. So before we get into your current Pluck business, I'd love for you to reflect with us all. What do you think contributed to like the early successes? And then how did that transition into you figuring out that, okay, maybe some stuff is not working in this second business model?
I think really early success was alignment with mission, and I think continued success, because of course we can all define success in different ways. Some people define it monetarily, others define it by mission. And I would say that when you're when you're on mission, and really focusing on giving value versus just making money, I think you're more open and potentially receptive to a bigger bounty. And I am always kind of checking myself. I'm always just really trying to get back to that homeostasis of what is my mission? What am I here to do? What kind of value am I trying to bring people or provide to people? And it was really telling. So I used to be in the entertainment business. I was pursuing acting and just trying to, in general, like I loved creativity and taking an idea and materializing it, whether it was as a script or a play or in a movie. And when I was doing that and pursuing that career, I was working hard. I mean, I was putting out 200% and maybe getting back 30. You know, it didn't matter how hard I worked, I still got back a lot less than I was giving. And that's just the nature of that business. But when I changed careers and aligned with that passion that I'd had since I was a little boy for cooking, it went from now I'm doing, you know, working hard, my normal 100%, but I was getting back 200%. I got back so much more than what I was giving. And I really manifested what I wanted. You know, I would think to myself, oh, I want to travel the US and I want to cook for a band. And no joke, a week or two, I would just think it. And then two weeks later, I get a call. Hey, we're looking for a chef for our Vans Warped Tour, or hey, we're looking for someone to drive across the country, you know, promoting our product and showcasing it. You know, I was just always these opportunities would provide themselves or present themselves is the better word. These opportunities would present themselves, and I would and sometimes I would even struggle. Like I'd be like, oh, that opportunity sounds so fun, but it's too long. Like it's asking me to be there doing it for 8 months, and I really can't be gone that long. And then I would finally just turn it down. And then the next day a new opportunity would arise, and it was like the perfect timing. You know, it was like 2 months, you know, something like that. Like it was just an amazing period of alignment. And so I have to assume that that's because I was in the pocket of my mission, you know, and I was tapping an essence, an energy of essence there. I have to assume that, because that's really the only change. You know, I was still myself. I was still working really hard, but it was just for a different result and for a different reason. And then to this day, you know, with the current company, you know, whenever I speak, even in this, you know, today when on this podcast, and we're talking about organ meats, as we eventually will, like I really try to bring more value than just we're selling a product. And yes, our product is like the gateway to getting organ meats in your diet, but it's more than that. We really are trying to help people get healthier. And so if, you know, sometimes we'll have people that say, oh, I already eat organ meats. And I'm like, great, how often? And they'll say, oh, well, I eat them every week. I'm like, great, then you don't need our product. Like, keep doing what you're doing. How can we support you in continuing that? You know, and then there'll be other people that say like, oh yeah, well, I eat the organs, but I only eat them once every 6 months. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't really move the needle. We need to increase that. So how can we support you? You know, here's some easy recipes, or they can just simply use Pluck, or they can do a mix of both. So it's all about how can we help people get these very ancestral, very nurturing foods into their diet, and get them as easy as possible. Because I think one of the mistakes that some companies, like some people make, and also some people assume, is that when we talk about ancestral foods, that we're trying to convince you to be like, oh, let's go back in time and pretend we're cave people, you know, or let's try to, you know, become hunters, or this. Is like, no. We live in a modern society. So I'm not trying to pretend we aren't living in that society. The key is, how do we take the best from the past and bring it forward to our present? It's not about us going backwards. It's about honoring what got us here and making sure that we keep it going in this modern lifestyle.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, James. And I want to just echo back the synchronicities that you were talking about. And I find that to be so true. And I think that's why we have things like beginner's luck and early success, is because when you're just so purely focused on the mission and it's so in alignment, a lot of times you will start having these opportunities and these things that align so perfectly. And it's like the universe co-creating it with you. And then when we start to kind of like question and doubt, or things are just not as easy anymore, and then that's when we start to go off track and things like that. And I also want to agree with you about the bringing ancient wisdom in the modern day and embracing technology and science and all of that. And I think it's like so common nowadays to see this all or nothing approach, and all of these controversies and contradictions and people getting into like online battles and conversations and differences of opinion and such, when it's like black and white, but that's not how things actually exist in nature. It's yin and yang, or yang, however you want to pronounce that. And it's a little bit of each, right? When we can't just say all black or all white, all wrong, all right. It's usually there's a spectrum, and usually we can agree to much more things than our disagreements would point to, right? So I love that you are trying to bring in the practices, the nutrients that historically have benefited human development, evolution, and health. And I think we can actually get into a controversy right here. So why don't you tell us why organ meats are so nutrient dense, and how would you approach somebody who, let's say, has a very vegan lifestyle, and how would you talk to them about this?
Oh, yeah. The good positioning. Well, besides organ meats, first of all, we talk about them, many of us who promote these kind of ancient foods, ancestral foods, we talk about them being Mother Nature's multivitamin. And we say Mother Nature's multivitamin because we're not doing anything to them. I mean, all we're doing is taking what nature has provided, and for our purposes, we're freeze drying that product. So we're just using modern techniques of preservation, because organ meats do go bad quickly if you don't preserve them. You're either going to be stuck with them frozen in your freezer for years, which is true for many people in the industry who even know they're supposed to be eating organs. I always joke and I say, how long have those organs been in your freezer? And they're like, a year. I'm like, yep. So even those people are intimidated or overwhelmed and don't know where to start. But if you want, so we're using the modern techniques of preservation. But besides being an excellent source of quality protein, which they are, they have an abundance of vitamins and minerals, like vitamin A in the form of retinol, B, actually all the B vitamins, particularly B12. They even have vitamin C, D, E, and K in the form of K2, which is the nutrient we've previously known as activator X, which is it's known for its ability to activate bone development. So it's a hugely beneficial vitamin. And then it has essential minerals like iron, calcium, copper, magnesium, selenium, phosphorus, potassium, zinc. And the way I like to easily just kind of bottom line is that the things that science tell us we need to create life. So the vitamins and minerals science tells you this is what we should have in our prenatal. Well, they're all in organ meats, all of them. And so how I talk to people that are choosing to eat a vegan diet, first of all, I really want to honor your process. Like whatever diet any of us choose, it's really important that we don't sway like reeds in the wind and just kind of follow what everyone else says, and that we just kind of go from diet to diet to diet, that we really just honor the path we've chosen. And it doesn't matter what diet that is, whatever diet that is, just honor that that's what you've chosen for whatever reason. You're on that path. You're making those choices. And I just ask you to reflect on the one person on that path with you that will never lie to you, that will never misdirect you, that is constantly giving you feedback about your choices. But most likely, you're not listening to that one person, and it's your body. Your body is responding to every choice you make on a daily basis. And so if you're feeling bloated, if you have bad skin, if your hair is falling out, if you have foggy brain, where you can't remember things, if you're overweight or even extremely underweight, if there's any extremity going on in your body, that is a sign that whatever you're choosing is not working. So I just ask that not only are you honoring the process you're on, but also honor the communication you're getting from your body. because this is a hardwire thing. Our bodies, these are Homo sapien bodies developed over 150,000 years ago. These bodies have communication pathways that our current diets um, do not communicate with, or another way to say it is they have a communication pathways that are confused by our modern frankenfoods. If you think about ancestral eating, flavor always equaled nutrition back in the day. And ultimately, your body was developed to really decipher two main messages. One is this food, when you're eating food, is this food going to nurture me, or is this food going to kill me? It was that simple, but also that complex, because we didn't have, nutritional labels, and we didn't have all the data we have now. Back in the day, of course, it was like, oh, you're foraging, and you find something that looks very plump and delicious, and it has a really juicy and fragrant smell, and you're like, I don't know. And so you're using your senses, and as you go to put it towards your mouth, everything in you is saying, take a bite, and you're listening to that. And then once you do, the juices are running down your mouth, and the flavor is communicating to your body, saying, oh yes, give me more of this, or it's saying there's something off, don't do this, right? So there's a neurolingual response, we call that, that we naturally have, biologically have. And so back in the day, listening to that communication pathway either killed you or fed you. So it was really, really important. The stakes were high. Well, now in our modern society, we are eating foods that are fabricated. The flavors are artificial, or they're natural. And I'm using air quotes, but it's like they're not flavors found in nature. They're just flavors coming from natural sources, but they're still artificial in the sense that they're not the flavor of the food that you're eating. It's an enhanced flavor. And a lot of times there's no nutrition behind that flavor. And so your body is completely confused. That's why we eat the whole box or the whole bag, because your body's just like waiting, like, hey, when am I going to be fed? When am I going to be fed? When am I going to be full? And it's like, you never get that communication pathway, because we're manipulating our ancestral bodies. So it's really key that we honor this process, but then also listen for the communication our body gives us. And hopefully that will answer one aspect of whatever diet we're choosing. And then I would just offer this second piece, which is a common misbelief about veganism, which is, oh, I am choosing to not harm or hurt any celestial being in this process of eating. And that is an extreme falsehood. And we just have to accept that whenever we eat, no matter what it is, whether it's grain, legume, vegetable, or animal, that something is going to die to feed us. And you can talk to any farmer, and I've talked to many, and they will tell you about the horrors they see when they feel those monocrops, meaning when when they're taking down those kind of corn crops, or those soy crops, or those really any crop, no matter what's grain or vegetable, and all the animals that are hiding in there, the small animals, the insects, the larger animals, sometimes there's doe hiding in there, and they get slaughtered by these machines. It's carnage, absolute carnage. So, and I see those farmers' faces, and their face says everything. And then you talk to a farmer like, Joel Salatin at Polyface Farms, and he'll talk about how, his animals have one bad day. They live very full, just healthy lives. They're fed what they should be fed. They're living on acreage and allowed to pasture or roam, and they're given love, absolute love, and they're honored by the people that are working that farm. And then they have one bad day, and that one bad day is what produces food to serve not one person, but to serve many, and sometimes towns and cities, and so there is a sense of honoring that animal, depending on where you get the sourcing, where you source it from. But in general, we have to just accept that no matter what diet we choose, something is going to die to feed us.
Yeah, thank you for that wonderful perspective. And I'm glad that you're bringing in the work of Dr. Weston A. Price with the Activator X, which is now known as vitamin K2 and bone health and jaw development. And also, like, talking about how traditional diets were not anywhere near what we now eat, as you said, with the Frankenfoods, right? And there was a very much of a dependence on what the land around you has, whether that's just animal products or whether it's a lot of nature and plants, and the seasonality of things changes, right? And so the way that we have developed those palettes, like you were talking about, and also the way that we hold on with our metabolism to specific nutrients also makes sense for our ancestral ways of eating. And what you were talking about really speaks to pharmacognosy, zoopharmacognosy, right? Where we are trusting our bodies and our senses to let us know what are we coming into contact with, and choosing things that are either nutrient dense or medicinal potentially for us, because, you know, I study herbalism. So this is what we talk about all the time. And the bitter taste, right, is something that told us this might be potentially poisonous or toxic. And so that's why we love sweet taste, because it tells our body this is nourishing, for example. But now we've completely perverted those affinities and are adding all of these things. And like you said, even if they're natural, they could be highly, highly processed and therefore inflammatory and very confusing, like you rightly said, to the body. And so I think there's really two main questions in the question that I asked, which is like, what's the individual best diet, right, for your own health? And like you said, your body's your best friend, and you can figure it out by just listening. Do I feel good? Am I healthy, right? And if you're not 100% healthy, then probably some of your lifestyle or dietary choices are contributing to that. And then the second thing is the things we can't control. So what are the environmental and global things that are contributing to our health as well? And what can be a sustainable sort of diet for most people most of the time, right? So sort of like a general question there. And so I think we need to look at both, right? Yes, we need to look at it from the individual perspective, and then also what can be more sustainable, right? What can we do to make sure the land is more healthy, the soil is more healthy, the topsoil specifically, so we can get nutrient-dense crops if we're eating, hopefully, some vegetation, which I highly think that we should be eating that. And then as far as like ecosystems, right? How do we make sure that we have balance in our ecosystems, and we start to have everybody be a little bit healthier, right? When we don't have to only see these people with resources that are able to go to, let's say, a functional medicine doctor and figure things out at an individual level. How can we start to make like everybody's health a little bit better by protecting and sustaining the planet for both vegetation and animal sources? So I think you started talking a little bit about that, and I'd love to hear your approach and how you consider this as you built your company.
Yeah, I mean, look, if the more closer to nature we can be, the better, right? So regenerative farming is considered one of the closest ways of farming to nature. It's an interesting conversation, though, because there's so many different perspectives. And as you stated early on, you know, there isn't much in nature that's just black or white. There's lots of gray areas. You know, ancestrally, humans have never been just one diet. They've never been all carnivore, and they've never been all vegetarian. They're resourceful. Whatever resources are available to them wherever they are living, they take them. So that would probably mean, more so than not, a mixture of everything. And that's something you can do research on. I mean, these are anthropologists that will tell you this. So this is very much steeped in what they're finding, is that you don't like that. This is what I find so absurd about the current very luxurious minded modern thinking, which is like, oh, I'm just going to eat ribeyes, or I'm just going to eat lentils. You can go either side. It's just like, there's no society that has ever been able to just so luxuriously choose one resource. It's like this idea that you would even slaughter an animal and only take certain cuts is absurd. Ancestrally, if you slaughtered an animal, used every part of that animal, every part, even bone you would mash up and you would put back in the ground to help, remineralize the soils. I mean, you would do so many things with that animal. And sadly, what's happening right now, which a lot of people assume is not. It's so interesting to me, but a lot of people think that we are using the whole, like, so when we slaughter an animal, they think, oh, well, they're using every part, whether it's going to humans or whether it's going to other animals or other industry, they think that that's happening. But I've been to slaughterhouses. I've talked to the people that own these slaughterhouses, and they've admitted to me, they said, no, we use about 50 to 51-ish percentage of the animal, which is mostly the muscle and then, of course, the bone with it. And then we trash the rest of it. So that's the realities. And if there aren't individuals that are running companies that are pushing different narratives and that are supporting a more regenerative or sustainable philosophy, then the way the industry is, it's very antiquated. It's very kind of like I grab what I need and I throw out what I don't, or I grab what I see a pathway for income or to sell, and then I throw out the parts that I don't have resources to sell. So I think in general, it's really easy for all of us in these industries, no matter what industry, but specifically the nutrition industry, to assume that we see everything or we understand it. And I don't think any one person understands it at all. I think it's extremely convoluted. There's parts of it that are very much steeped in the past that haven't been modernized or been rethought. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. And I think it extends to, like, you're seeing so many different types of diets at a time where I think, isn't it ironic that we see so many diets? Because ancestrally, we never had the luxury of different diets. You ate to survive. So if you had something to eat, you best darn have eaten it, or you would have died. So this idea that I think it's just such a first world problem to be able to, like, pick and choose, what foods you're going to eat. And I think while we justify what we eat and come up with all these fancy ideas, whether it's, because it's for the earth, or it's because it's for health, or it's because of this or that ultimately what most of us are doing, we're choosing a path that we are convinced is right. And sometimes it's even steeped in that we're actually picky eaters. And so we're picking the path that supports our pickiness, which I know some people are going to be charged by me saying that, but I was a picky eater growing up, and I still am. And I have justified my choices by saying, well, I don't think that's right, or I don't think but it's ultimately because I was just a picky eater. I didn't like the texture or the taste or something. So I think we all have to be honest with ourselves about that one. But ultimately, I think we're getting on that soapbox. We're filling that box with whatever justifies us standing on it. And then that's what we spout. But I just think that we sometimes are missing out on new information, true information. And I say this with knowledge that there's so much that I don't even understand. But ultimately, that's why I always default to, what does your body tell you? Because, we are the only species in the world that looks to someone else to tell us what to eat. But there's 9 million species. So clearly, we're not special. Like, we're not so different that we're the only ones that don't innately know how to eat. It's because we've messed up that internal communication, that connection. We've messed it up. We've mucked it up. And because of that, now we are confused. We don't know what we're supposed to be eating. But that knowledge is inside us. It is there. And our bodies are always communicating what works or doesn't work. And it's truly our job to listen. We have to listen not only to what's going on inside us, but I really believe we have to listen more to the environment. I was talking to someone once, and they were talking about, I can't remember if it was sustainable building or just, actually, no, I remember now. It was about running a business. And they were saying, like, I think we should, instead of like running a business as though we are gods and that we control nature, what if we ran a business as though we were the nature? What if you actually thought about your business as you are the river that's in nature? So how would the river build and structure this business versus how does, man or woman looking outside at the river? How am I going to change the river? But how does the river change me as a business, as a person? And so I think that's ultimately what would be a really powerful way to start changing our perspective.
Yeah. Wow. That's beautiful. I have to write that one down and think through that on my own time. And yeah, I love what you were saying about the sort of consumerism model that has perpetuated and bled into every single part of our Western first world society. And, I'm coming from pretty much a second world country, and where everything was super different. And I have kept some of those like sustainable, very, I guess, frugal practices and reusing and being resourceful and all of that. And when I came to this country and even like looking at my peers and my community, I'm just shocked at how much waste there is. And when it comes to looking at industries, it's way, way worse because it's on much larger scales. And there aren't enough restrictions or laws that are advocating for more regeneration, more sustainability in these areas. And so I think that's a huge problem that we have to address as individuals, industries, and government. Ideally, legislature has to also drive the culture, because essentially this is a cultural thing, right? And so I think it's great because it's coming out of this like abundance mindset. And at the same time, it's also very egocentric because we're throwing out everything that we don't need, but we're not really thinking maybe somebody else needs it and maybe we don't need to throw it out and create so much waste. Or maybe we can reuse some things that we normally throw out. But when it comes to, sacrificing an animal's life so we can enjoy the benefits of it, if we are choosing to consume any part of that animal, we should be able to repurpose and reuse certainly all parts of that animal so we can truly honor their life and what they're giving to us. So I really love that you're speaking on that and thinking about ways to do that. Just to give you an example, bone broth is very, very healing. We talk a lot about it in the health space. And generally, like, you don't see bones like being sold, right? So you either have to save the bones from the animals that you buy, or, we have to kind of start asking butchers and advocating for this to be more available, because it doesn't seem to be very commonplace, right? As of right now.
It is getting more commonplace, I gotta say, because back in the day, you're so right. Because I've been in this industry as a chef for over 20 years. And when I first started and I was trying to do that exactly, make bone broths, it was really hard to find bones, to your point, really, really challenging. But now you can more so than not find this stuff. So it's really encouraging. I've been talking to more and more farmers. So I started Pluck even we started over 4 years ago. And when I started, organ meats were very much not the sales were not very good. They were kind of still ostracized very much by society, but now American society. But now I'm talking to farmers and they're like, oh yeah, I'm selling out of, my livers and my hearts, and we can't, it's the first time in a long time where we've been able to make a profit from those items. So it's very exciting and encouraging that people are starting to get it. because, you know, one of the things I didn't mention that is a big concern around, you know, basically any farming practice is that, you know, first of all, you mentioned this, but our topsoils are not as nutrient dense as they once were. They're producing less nutrient dense foods. And this is not an easy fix. So the fact that this is already happening, they've been tracking this since the 1960s here in the US. So they can literally see that produce is less nutrient dense than ever. But here's the other issue is we're also, the agricultural practices are pulling these products off of the vine or off of the tree before they're even ripe. You know, we spray these chemicals on the, it's an organic chemical, but still we spray tomatoes. We pick them when they're green. We spray them to make them turn red. So when you pull these produce early, that means they have less time to even become a little bit more nutrient dense. And then there's the travel time. They become less nutrient dense due to the travel time. Then there's the time that they're in the grocery store. Once again, they become less nutrient dense. So there's some people that are now saying, like, you know, that broccoli that you buy at the grocery store, that by the time you go to eat it, it actually has no nutrition because of how long it took to get to the grocery store and then how long it took for you to finally eat it. And then how you cook it could also denature it. So there's just so much that we could really get into the weeds about, you know, of why things are not as nutrient dense that we actually once thought were. And that is actually precisely why I focus on organ meats, because organ meats are incredibly nutrient dense. And so they're filling in the nutrients we're not getting from the other foods. And they're unadulterated. There's nothing, we're not doing anything weird to them. They're from, hopefully you're eating it from a healthy animal, but either so, even from a conventional animal or a 100% grass-fed animal, they're still nutrient dense. So it's like, yes, one is better than the other, but I'm very much the type of person that will tell you, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Like, just because you can't afford 100% grass-fed does not mean you should not be eating organ meats. If that were true, then what is going on at the Asian markets and the Mexican markets? You know, in other like international markets, they're all selling organ meats. All those all the people that shop at those markets are in some more cases than not, but they're eating organ meats, and I guarantee those animals are not 100% grass fed. But yeah, they're extremely healthy individuals. They're extremely healthy ethnicities, you know, that are eating these organ meats. So I don't think we should ever get so box these things in and think like, oh, I can only eat this if it fits this characteristics. It's like, no, is it a nutrient dense food? If it is, yes, great. Then you've already passed my first test, which is that's what I need to get in my body. Then once you can afford it and once you can be more picky, then yes, there's other things you want to look for. You know, is it 100% grass fed? Is it, you know, I don't know, though. That's probably the biggest one. Is it 100% grass fed? Pastured is another one. I would also advocate to not just focus on one organ, but try to eat the whole animal versus just the liver, which is what most people are doing, but truly try to get the whole animal. And then I would also advocate for don't just stick with one species, get other, you know, if you go hunting, you know, eat the organs from that animal, eat poultry, eat fish organs, you know, eat the whole fish if you can versus just the fillets. So there's lots of things you can expand on. But the first is just start getting these foods in your diet, because we are all nutrient deficient. Every single one of us. We're all nutrient deficient. That's what modern life does. That's the product of modern living, which is nutrient deficiency. So the question is, what are you doing to become more nutrient sufficient? And I'm hoping that you're not just getting them from supplements, because a lot of those are not natural.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up supplements, because one thing I was going to say is there's a booming supplement industry out there, and let's face it, it's pharmaceutical adjacent as far as the model of care, and it also produces a lot of waste and packaging issues and sustainability issues. So it has a lot of plastic, it has a lot of other things that maybe you don't want to be touching every day, and then a lot of other excipients that you have to worry about other than the active ingredients, and then absorption issues. Once you even find a good quality supplement, like how much of that is getting absorbed. So I think it has a lot of challenges. And I think, being, let's say, a vegan, while I also honor that, and there's nothing wrong with that, likely you can't get all your nutrients from plant sources without supplementing some of those things back from supplements, right? Essentially. But then adding things like organ meats, potentially, that could be another form of vitamin and mineral supplementation that you can think of as like truly food being your medicine. So that's what I really encourage people to think about as they research more in this topic, and also like the health status of people that consume these things. As you mentioned, we have to look, what are these countries consuming and not consuming as well, and how are they treating their animals, even if it's not labeled grass-fed, etc. Like maybe they have smaller industries, maybe they don't have these big slaughterhouses. Like we have to kind of dig deeper, and they definitely are probably not eating as much junk processed foods, or like eating out at restaurants that have like really, questionable, dubious oils and other things that they're using, and deep frying. Okay, I'm not even going to go there, but I think what I want to ask to finish off our conversation is like this concept of us trusting our animal body, so to speak, and our instincts and knowing what's good for us. And I think we've been taught to move away from that and into the mind, and into the logic and the science, and, question. And we need like all the doses, we need to have all the evidence, and when we are introducing these kind of topics, likely you'll get a lot of questions like, well, where is the evidence? What are the stats? What is this? What is that? So I'd love for you to just speak as we wrap up to somebody that might have a lot of these questions of how to use your product appropriately and make sure that they are getting sufficient medicinal quality from the product.
Yeah. So just to share a little deeper. So Pluck is what we call a superfood seasoning. Maybe even more appropriately, an ancestral superfood seasoning. So what we're taking is 5 freeze-dried powdered organ meats. We're taking liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas, and we're combining them with salt. We use Redmond real salt right now, and then we also have organic spices and herbs. So we're basically and effectively achieving 3 hurdles. One is we make organs taste good. If you're someone that thinks they're gross, we make them taste delicious. 2, we make it so you don't need to know how to cook them. You just simply salt your food, and you're getting those nutrients every time you do it. We call it microdosing plus frequent use equals cumulative effect. And then 3 is a lot of people still have issues with sourcing, even though, we do have an internet and you can pretty much find almost anything on that. There's still many people that just want to find something locally and they don't have that resource. So we've done it for you. We're sourcing from 100% grass-fed New Zealand cows. They get green grass year round. It's a very clean industry over there. And we are vetting, we make sure that they meet the criteria that we think matter. So that's what Pluck is. And that is a question we get all the time, which is, how much, am I really getting, and how do I know it's enough? And I always find that question really interesting, because it's a very, what I say, American question, because in America, we have this concept of go big or go home. And I think it's really fascinating, because if you think about it, that's the surest path towards burnout and or towards non-compliance. Anytime we do anything that is extreme, it is not lifestyle. The things that are lifestyle that really do move our health needle are the things that we do small amounts of on a daily basis. So let's use teeth, brushing our teeth. If we had to brush our teeth for 2 hours a day, I guarantee there'd be a lot of funky teeth out there. Guaranteed. But the fact that we only have to do it 1 to 2 minutes a day is achievable, right? if you look at any actual thing that you're doing health wise, the things that are lifestyle and achievable are done in small doses. Even working out now, unless you're someone who's like kind of addicted or that's your lifestyle, like you're a bodybuilder, like most people do it in about, an hour or less a day. You're not doing it for 8 hours, right? It's just like it's not as extreme as that. And so I'm looking for the things that I can do a little bit of every day that I can make it lifestyle, because that's the other issue I have, which is, I work conferences all the time. I've been around long enough to see all of these different health trends. And I always think of like, things like Suzanne Summers had the Thigh Master back in the day. Everyone bought it. I mean, it was huge. She made so much money. But what's so interesting is that then not too soon after people bought it, like a month later or even maybe a year later for some, it was at their garage sale. Like, so it was clearly something they bought thinking, oh, I'm going to use it, and then they didn't. And that, if we're really honest with ourselves, is kind of true with all of us. We have high hopes. We learn about something new. We get all excited. And then we do it for about a week. We do it for about 4 weeks. And then it dies down and we go right back to our comfort zones, the things that we already do, that we already are familiar with. And so I recognize our humanness. I'm not shy. I'm like, I am truly here. I want to help us. Like, I'm trying to help me. I'm trying to help my kids. I want to make sure they're getting the most nutrient dense foods in their diets. I want to make sure that I'm living long enough to be a part of their body. And I get it. We're all human. So I'm not trying to fight that. What I'm trying to say is like, look, I know you already season your food. We do it. We don't have to think about it. It's not a new habit. What I am saying is right now from that seasoning you're eating, you're getting nothing. And if you are getting a little bit of nutrients, it's not much. And sometimes more so than not, the seasonings you're using have ingredients that you actually don't want and are probably hindering your health. Like they have seed oils, or they have sugar, or they have some kind of flow agent that you didn't know because it's not even listed. So that's just a fact. And so what I'm saying is like, just switch your seasoning, and now you're getting Mother Nature's multivitamin. You're getting it as Mother Nature intended. And the more you use it, the more you benefit. And we have proof. I mean, we have customers that attest. They're like, skin issues start to go away, sleep improves. I've gotten emailed by parents whose kids had this one father emailed us early on, and he said, my daughter was born with this whatever skin issue it was. We tried lots of different things. Nothing was working. Someone recommended organ meats, but we couldn't get it. She couldn't take capsules and she wouldn't eat what we were giving her. And then I heard about Pluck and I gave her that, and her skin issues started going away. And we've heard so many stories like that, or people who had major pregnancy issues and with their first couple kids, and then the only thing they did different for their third kid was they used Pluck from beginning to end, and they had no issues, and they had an abundance of milk supply. So the power of organ meats, I don't like, it's sad to me that I even have to convince people of the power of this natural food, when the reality is we wouldn't even be having this conversation if our ancestors didn't eat it. So this is an ancestral food. We're just trying to bring it to the masses. We're just trying to say, hey, this food is important. We need this food in our diets. And I get it that there are hurdles, and that I understand why you're not doing it. So how can we get you to do it? And I believe this is the easiest way, but in no way is this the only way. But the key is you just got to do it. So you tell me which is the way you're going to do, and whatever that is, then please do it. And I will celebrate you for it. But I do believe we are better off getting these foods in our diets than not getting them. And this is also really important, is that a lot of times these deficiencies produce cravings. They produce chronic illness. They produce these other things that we do to try, and we don't know why. Like, I don't understand why I crave sugar. Or I don't understand why I'm always so grumpy. It's like sometimes it is these nutrient deficiencies more so than not. And so what's kind of amazing is when you get organ meats, Mother Nature's multivitamin, into your diet, you actually start to feel better. These chronic issues go away, and what happens when you start to feel better is you start to treat people better. And now we have a better world. So I really do believe that this is kind of like the secret weapon, the natural secret weapon towards actually a better world.
Amazing. Well, those are some powerful testimonials, James, and I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure we can talk for another couple of hours at least, but we're at the top of this hour, and I'd love to do 1 minute rapid fire if you still have a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. So what's the number one thing that you would advise somebody to implement right now to have a better quality of life?
Sleep. Every decision you make stems from quality sleep. So
Yeah.
focus on that first.
I was just thinking the only 8 hour time frame that you actually need is sleep, right? 1 minute for brushing teeth, but 8 hours for sleeping. That's absolutely true. Question number 2 is, you mentioned that you're a chef, obviously, and that you can cook organ meats. So give us like a very quick favorite recipe of yours to actually create it and make it taste good.
Well, the key with organ meats, let's just even focus on liver since that's what a lot of people do, is a lot of people are overcooking them. So when you actually, when they're in their raw state, they're actually at their kind of less, they taste the best. And so the more you cook it or overcook it, the stronger tasting it gets. So it's at its mildest when it's raw. So I always kind of teach people of like, first try it raw, see how, if it's from a healthy animal, you're fine. But then when you go to cook it, don't cook it till it's, that gray color, but let it be still a little pink, and then try it, and or then blend it, because there's residual heat after you cook something. So you want to pull it off the pan when it's still a little pink, because the residual heat will continue to cook it. So if you cook it all the way through, then that means it's going to overcook on your plate. And then, lastly, around organ meats, I would say is don't assume you have to start with cow. The milder organ meat is chicken, and it's chicken hearts. Chicken hearts are extremely mild. Start there. And then also think about ratios. When you go to combine them in a sauce, let's say, you don't have to add 20 hearts, add 2, add 3, to that sauce or that stew or whatever it is you're cooking, and make sure that the ratio of those hearts that you're adding are a lot less than the main course of that meal. And no one will know. Just chop them up so they don't look like little hearts, and people will think they're just mushrooms.
Wow, well, those are some wonderful tips. And yeah, I agree. The texture also gets very like chewy and not great when you overcook stuff. And it goes back to our vitality concept with the vegetables as well. Like if you don't do it local, it's not fresh, and if you cook it wrong, it's not going to be as beneficial. So I love that. And then finally, can you share a fun or surprising fact about yourself?
Oh, well, I don't watch much TV, but whenever, or sports, I should say, I don't watch a lot of sports on TV, but when I have had the opportunity, one of the sports I love is those log chopping competitions where you see these people, like these woods people, like trying to, how fast they can chop a piece of wood or something. For some reason, I've always been attracted to that kind of sportsmanship, and a lot of people don't really know that. At all about me. So yeah.
Well, that's fun. All right, James. Well, thank you so much again for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us. Please tell the audience how they can learn more about your work and order themselves a Pluck.
Yeah. So you can find us at eatpluck.com. You can find Pluck there. We have lots of opportunities for savings. You can even sample it the first time you purchase. So you can get a sampler of all of our different flavors, or you can find our lots of different ways to save, whether it's buying in bulk or large bags or whatnot. So lots of opportunities. And then you can find us also on Amazon. And then you can find us socially at Eat Pluck, and I am at Chef James Berry.
Perfect. I'll share all that in the show notes, and I wish you a blessed day ahead. Bye, James.
Cheers.